So I'm standing in a hospital waiting room covered in my little sister's blood, watching nurses debate whether to call social services while 5 other kids cling to me asking if Luna is going to die. And all I can think about is what Mom said to me when I was 9 years old. If you ever tell anyone, they'll take these kids away, and you'll never see each other again. I need to tell you how I got here, because this didn't start with a cruise or $50 or Luna's chin splitting open on a playground. It started when I was 8 and Mom handed me my newborn brother and said, "Here's your responsibility." By the time I was 13, there were 6 of them. 6 kids that I fed and bathed and dressed and walked to school while my parents lived like a couple with no children. They moved all the babies into my room and told the world they just had one very mature daughter. And I believed this was normal, that the oldest daughters in good families raised the younger kids so parents could focus on important things. I believed it because I didn't know anything else. And because every time I felt like breaking, Mom reminded me what would happen if anyone found out. So I'm going to tell you about the 5 years I spent being a mother before I was old enough to drive. How I forged signatures and skipped school and learned to stretch nothing into enough. What happened when my grandmother finally saw the truth, and my parents showed up with a story that almost made her believe I was the problem. And the moment my little brother walked up to the social worker with his school journal and changed everything because what he'd written in there was something my parents never expected anyone to see. The nurses keep looking at me with these sharp eyes, the kind that cut right through you, and I can see them whispering to each other by the desk. One keeps glancing at my blood-stained shirt, then at the 5 kids wrapped around my legs like they're afraid I might disappear. I try to explain about the playground, about how Luna fell off the monkey bars, but my voice comes out wrong. Too high, too shaky. I sound like what I am, a 13-year-old kid, not someone who should be in charge of 6 other people. The youngest twin starts crying louder and I reach down to pick her up, but one of the nurses steps forward and says, "Maybe I should let her sit in the chair instead." The way she says it makes it clear she doesn't think I should be touching anyone right now. Daphne presses closer against my side and whispers that Luna's going to be okay. Right? I nod, but I don't know if I'm lying. There's so much blood on my shirt, dried and stiff now, and I can't stop seeing Luna's chin split open, the white of bone underneath before the blood covered everything. The kids won't stop crying and the nurses won't stop staring, and I know how this looks. I know exactly how this looks. The emergency room doctor finally comes out and he's got this tired face that makes me think he's seen everything. But when he looks at me, his expression changes to something I can't quite read. He asks where my parents are and I tell him they're coming. They're on their way, even though I don't know if that's true. He looks at Luna's file, then at me, then at Luna, who's still bleeding through the gauze the nurses put on her chin. He says he needs to stitch her up now, that waiting for parental consent isn't possible when a child is actively bleeding. But then he adds that someone is definitely calling social services, that this situation requires a report. I feel my stomach drop through the floor. Mom's voice echoes in my head from when I was 9, when I first tried to tell my teacher I was tired. "They'll take these kids away and you'll never see each other again. Is that what you want?" I follow the doctor into the treatment room, holding Luna's small hand while she screams through the numbing shots. The needle goes in and out, pulling her skin back together, and all I can think is that I failed. I was supposed to keep everyone safe, and I failed, and now they're going to take them all away, just like Mom said. I sit in the waiting room after, my phone clutched in my hand, calling Mom's number over and over. It rings once, then goes to voicemail. I try Dad's. Same thing. I call Mom again, and again, and again. 17 times total before I finally accept that both phones are off because they're on the cruise ship somewhere in the Caribbean. Probably at dinner. Probably laughing about something while I'm here watching everything fall apart. The $50 bill is in my pocket. 2 20s and a 10 that Mom handed me before they left last Monday. She said it was plenty for the week, that I knew how to make things stretch. I pull the money out and count it even though I know what's there. $50. The emergency room bill is going to be hundreds, maybe thousands. I have no insurance cards, no way to pay, no parents to call. The woman at the registration desk keeps looking over at me, and I know she's going to come ask questions soon. I shove the money back in my pocket and pull the kids closer, like somehow keeping them physically near me will stop what's coming. Daphne tugs on my sleeve, her voice so quiet I almost miss it. She says she's hungry. I look at her, really look at her, and realize her face is pale and her hands are shaking slightly. None of them have eaten since breakfast, since the cereal I poured at 6 this morning before Luna fell and everything went wrong. It's past 3 now. 7 hours. The twins are leaning against each other looking gray and tired. Even Luna, with her freshly stitched chin, keeps touching her stomach. I count the kids and do the math in my head. 6 kids. The vending machine. I can get them something to hold them over until we get home. I pull out $15 from the 50 and walk to the vending machines in the corner, the kids trailing behind me like ducklings. I buy crackers and cookies and apple juice boxes, the cheapest things that will fill stomachs. $3 per kid. The snacks disappear in minutes, the kids eating like they're starving because they kind of are. I watch the nurses watching us and try to make everyone look normal. like we're just a regular family dealing with a regular emergency. But the crying has started again, quieter now, but still there, and I can't make it stop no matter what I do. I remember being 8 years old, standing in our living room in my school uniform. Mom came through the front door carrying this bundle wrapped in blue blankets, and Dad was right behind her with bags from the hospital. I was excited because I'd been waiting all day to meet my baby brother, to see what he looked like, to maybe hold him for a minute. Mom walked straight to me and put him in my arms without any warning. The weight surprised me. He was heavier than my dolls, warmer, and he made these small grunting noises that scared me a little. Mom said, "Here's your responsibility now," like she was handing me a school assignment instead of a whole human person. She told me his name was Gavin and that I'd be helping take care of him, because that's what big sisters do in good families. Dad sat down in his chair and opened the newspaper. He didn't look at me or Gavin or Mom. He just started reading about sports scores while Mom went upstairs to take a nap. I stood there holding my brother, not knowing what to do, until he started crying and I had to figure it out on my own. By the time I was 9, I was doing all of Gavin's feedings because Mom said she was too tired. She'd had him for a year and apparently that was enough. She started going to the gym every morning, these 2-hour sessions where she'd come back in workout clothes smelling like perfume and talking about her friends. I'd be home with Gavin, trying to figure out how to mix the formula the right way, how to get the temperature perfect so he wouldn't scream. Dad started leaving for work at 6 in the morning instead of 7:30, before any of the morning chaos started. He'd slip out while I was changing Gavin's diaper or trying to get him to eat something. I learned to do everything alone. How to change diapers without crying when they were really bad. How to give baths without dropping a wet baby. How to do laundry at 9 years old because Gavin went through 6 outfits a day. Mom would come home from the gym and check if things were clean, if Gavin was fed, if I'd done everything right. She never asked if I was okay or if I needed help. She just inspected my work like a teacher grading homework. When I turned 10, Mom sat me down at the kitchen table and told me she was pregnant again. "Actually," she said, "it's twins." I remember feeling my chest get tight, like someone was squeezing my lungs. I already couldn't keep up with Gavin, who was 2 and into everything and never slept through the night. How was I supposed to handle 2 more babies? Mom must have seen something in my face because she grabbed my hand hard and told me that good daughters in strong families help raise the younger ones. She said this was normal, that her mother had done the same thing with her siblings, that I should be grateful for the practice because someday I'd have my own kids and I'd be so prepared. She said most girls my age would love this opportunity. Then she told me not to tell anyone at the school about how much I helped because people wouldn't understand. They'd think something was wrong when really everything was fine. I nodded because what else could I do? I was 10. I didn't know that other families weren't like this. The twins arrived in March and Mom moved all 3 babies into my bedroom that same week. She said they needed me close for nighttime care, that it made sense for them to be near the person who'd be taking care of them. My bed got pushed into the corner to make room for the cribs and changing table. The room smelled like diapers and formula all the time. I started sleeping in 2-hour chunks, waking up when one baby cried, then another, then the third. Sometimes all 3 would cry at once and I'd have to choose who to help first. My grades dropped from A's to C's because I couldn't stay awake in class. I'd fall asleep during math and the teacher would snap at me to pay attention. Once I fell asleep during a test and got a 0. Mom got called in for a meeting about my performance and she told the teacher I was just being lazy, that I stayed up too late playing video games. The teacher believed her. Why wouldn't she? Mom looked perfect in her nice clothes and makeup, talking about how concerned she was about my choices. By age 13, I was responsible for 6 kids total. Gavin turned 9 and the twins were 7 and Daphne was 5, and then there were the 2 youngest including Luna. My room became a nursery completely. Cribs and toddler beds crammed together so tight you could barely walk between them. I slept on a mattress on the floor in the corner, the only space left. Mom and Dad's bedroom stayed pristine the whole time. King-size bed with fluffy pillows, attached bathroom, mini fridge stocked with their favorite snacks, TV mounted on the wall. Their door had a lock on the inside that they used every night. Our door had a lock on the outside that Dad installed when the twins were 4 and kept trying to wander around the house at night. He said it was for safety, but really it was so they wouldn't hear the babies crying and have to deal with it. I was the only one with a key. Mom started taking Dad out to restaurants several nights a week. She'd come into my room around 5, hand me a $20 bill and tell me to order pizza for everyone. Then she and Dad would leave, all dressed up, smelling like cologne and perfume. They'd come home late, sometimes after midnight, and I'd hear them laughing in the hallway. They'd step over the toys scattered everywhere, the baby gates, the sippy cups, like none of it existed. They'd go straight to their room and lock the door. Sometimes I'd still be awake with a crying baby and I'd hear their TV through the wall, some movie playing while I walked back and forth trying to get Luna to sleep. In the morning, they'd sleep until 9 or 10 while I got everyone dressed and fed and out the door to the school. They lived like a couple with no children, and I lived like a mother with 6. I look up, and there's a woman in scrubs walking toward me with a clipboard, and my stomach drops because I know what's coming. She's got this professional smile that doesn't reach her eyes, and she's scanning the waiting room like she's counting heads. The 5 kids pressed against my legs go quiet all at once. That scared quiet they do when they sense something bad is about to happen. The woman stops in front of me and asks where my parents are, and I open my mouth but nothing comes out at first because this is it. This is the moment Mom warned me about for 5 years. She asks again, gentler this time, and I manage to say they stepped out for coffee. They'll be right back. Everything's fine. She writes something on her clipboard and asks how old I am. 13, I tell her, and she writes that down too. Then she wants to know if this has happened before, if I'm often alone with 6 children and I can feel the walls closing in. I say no. This is just a one-time thing. Luna fell at the playground and I brought everyone to the hospital because that's what you do in emergencies. My voice sounds too high, too desperate. Gavin is staring at me from across the waiting room and I can see it in his face. That look that says he knows I'm lying and he's trying to decide what to do about it. The woman asks if my parents know we're here, and I show her my phone with all the calls I made. See, I've been trying to reach them. She nods, but she's still writing, and I know every word she puts on that clipboard is another nail in the coffin of the life we've been living. The woman introduces herself as someone who needs to speak with me privately about the situation, and panic shoots through my chest, because private means away from the kids, means I can't keep an eye on everyone. I start to say no, but it comes out as please can they stay where I can see them? They're already scared about Luna. They need me right here. She looks at the 5 kids wrapped around my legs, and something shifts in her expression. She says we can talk in a room right next to the waiting area, glass walls so I can see them the whole time, and I realize she's testing me, watching how I react to being separated. I agree because what choice do I have? And I try to peel the kids off, but they're holding on tight. The twins start crying and asking where I'm going, and I have to promise I'll be right there. Right through that window. I'm not leaving. When I finally get them settled with Gavin watching over them, I follow the woman into this small room with a table and chairs and windows that look out into the waiting area. She closes the door and suddenly it's too quiet. Just me and her and this clipboard full of observations. She says her name is Marlena Corbett and she's a social worker, and those 2 words make my hands start shaking. She asks me to tell her about my family, about how I ended up at the hospital alone with 6 children, and I stick to the script I've been rehearsing in my head. I'm just a responsible older sister, I explain. My parents are usually very involved, but they had to step out briefly. This is definitely a one-time emergency situation. Marlena writes everything down, and her pen makes this scratching sound that fills the silence between my words. She asks who usually takes care of the kids, and I say my parents, of course. I just help out sometimes like any big sister would. Then she asks about school, whether I miss a lot of days, and I feel the ground getting slippery under my feet. I say no. I go to the school regularly. My attendance is fine. She asks about meals, who cooks dinner, who gets everyone ready in the morning. I start talking about how we all pitch in as a family, how my mom is great at organizing everything, how my dad works hard to provide for us. But she keeps asking follow-up questions, and I'm getting tangled up in details that don't quite match what I said before. When do your parents usually get home from work? What time do the little ones go to bed? Who stayed home when Luna was sick last month? Each question is a trap, and I'm trying to remember which lies I've already told and which truths I need to hide. Marlena asks if she can see my phone again, and I hand it over with fingers that won't stop trembling. She scrolls through the call log, counting the 17 unanswered calls to Mom and Dad, and asks when exactly they'll be back. I try to keep lying, but my voice cracks when I say they'll be home soon. Maybe tonight. Definitely tomorrow. She looks up from the phone and asks me directly where they are right now, and I can't hold it together anymore. They're on a cruise, I admit. They'll be back next week. They left me with $50 and I thought it would be enough. But then Luna got hurt. Marlena's whole face changes from concerned to something harder. Something that looks like anger mixed with sadness. She asks how long they've been gone, and I say 5 days. We have 2 more to go. I've been managing fine until this happened. She writes for a long time without saying anything, and I watch her pen move across the paper, knowing she's writing words that are going to change everything. She puts down her pen and tells me she needs to contact my parents immediately, that leaving a 13-year-old alone with 6 children for a week is not appropriate. I start explaining that I'm very mature for my age, that I've been doing this kind of thing for years, that my parents trust me. But even as the words come out, I can hear how wrong they sound, how they prove her point instead of mine. Marlena asks if there's another adult family member she can call, someone who can come be with us while we sort this out. I think about Mom's warning, about how telling anyone means losing everyone, but I'm out of options and terrified. I give her my grandmother's number, my fingers shaking so hard I can barely type it into her phone. Mom always said Grandma was judgmental and would cause problems, that she didn't understand our family, that we should keep our distance. But right now, I need someone, anyone, who might help me keep us all together. Marlena steps out of the room to make the call, and I press my face against the glass window, watching the kids in the waiting area. Gavin has the twins on either side of him, and he's reading them a book from the children's corner, trying to keep them calm. The youngest two are fighting over the last package of crackers I bought from the vending machine. Luna is still in the treatment area getting her chin stitched up, and I can't see her, and that makes everything worse. I watch Marlena through the office window across the hall, talking on her phone, and I can tell from her body language that someone answered. She's nodding, writing things down, and her expression gets more serious with every passing minute. After what feels like forever, she comes back and tells me my grandmother is coming right now, that she sounded very concerned and will be here as fast as she can. I ask what happens next, and Marlena says she's going to wait for my grandmother to arrive before making any decisions about next steps. That phrase, next steps, lands heavy in my chest because I know what it means. It means she's deciding whether to take us all away from each other, whether to call more people, whether to split us up into different homes. I go back to the waiting room and all 6 kids swarm me immediately, talking over each other, asking where I went, what the lady wanted, when we can go home. I'm trying to calm everyone down when I hear Luna's voice from behind me. One of the nurses is walking her out, her chin covered in white bandages, and she's crying and reaching for me. I scoop her up and she buries her face in my neck, and that's when I hear it. "Mama," she says. "Mama, I want to go home." The twins pick it up, both of them calling me Mama while they tug on my shirt, and I see the nurses exchanging looks. I try to correct them, tell them to call me by my name, but they're too upset and scared and they keep saying it. "Mama, Mama, when can we leave? Mama, I'm hungry. Mama, my tummy hurts." Every time they say it, I watch the nurses' expressions get more concerned, watch them whisper to each other, and I know this is making everything so much worse. Marlena is standing in the doorway of that glass room watching all of this, writing more notes on her clipboard. And I want to scream that this isn't what it looks like, that I didn't teach them to call me that. It just happened over time because I'm the one who's always there. 40 minutes later, a woman rushes through the emergency room doors, and I recognize her from old photos, even though I haven't seen her in years. Grandma looks older than I remember, her hair more gray, but her eyes are the same sharp blue that Mom has. She stops when she sees us, takes in the whole scene. Me covered in dried blood, Luna with her bandaged chin, 5 other kids pressed against me in various states of exhaustion and fear. For a second, nobody moves, and I watch her face cycle through shock, confusion, anger, and something else I can't name. Then her expression settles into this determined look, and she walks straight over to us. She doesn't say anything at first, just pulls me and Luna into a hug that smells like lavender and makes me want to cry harder than I already am. The other kids crowd in around us, and she somehow manages to wrap her arms around all of us at once, and I feel something crack open in my chest that I've been keeping sealed tight for 5 years. Marlena comes over and Grandma straightens up, still keeping one hand on my shoulder. They introduce themselves and start talking in low voices, but I can hear everything. Marlena explains the situation, the week-long absence, the 17 calls, the 6 children with 1 teenager. Grandma's hand tightens on my shoulder with every detail, and I can feel her getting angrier. She asks Marlena what's being done, and Marlena says she was about to call for emergency placement when I provided Grandma's contact information. The word placement makes my stomach lurch because it means foster homes, it means splitting up, it means exactly what Mom said would happen. Grandma says she wants to take all of us home with her tonight, that we're family, and we should stay together. Marlena hesitates and explains that she's technically just a relative who hasn't been involved in our care, that there are procedures for emergency placement. I start begging before I can stop myself, telling Marlena we need to stay together, that I promise to keep everyone safe, that splitting us up will destroy them. Grandma kneels down in front of me and takes both my hands, and her eyes are wet when she tells me I'm a child, and this was never supposed to be my job. She pulls me a little ways away from the others and asks me directly how long this has been going on. I try to make it sound better than it is, try to say it's really not that bad, we manage fine, I'm good at taking care of everyone. But Grandma is looking at me with this expression that says she sees right through every lie I've ever told to protect this family. She asks again, her voice gentle but firm, and something inside me just breaks. 5 years, I tell her, since I was 8 years old. All 6 of them, every single day and night, and I'm so tired I can't remember what it feels like not to be tired. The words pour out and I can't stop them. About the bedroom we all share, about the lock on the door, about Mom. And Dad going out to restaurants while I feed everyone with $20, about missing school because someone was sick, about learning to forge signatures and lie to teachers. Grandma's face goes pale and then red, and she pulls me back into a hug. But this time I can feel her shaking with anger that isn't directed at me. She marches straight over to Marlena, and I can see her hands shaking, but her voice comes out steady and hard. She asks what's being done about this situation, and Marlena starts explaining that she was about to call for emergency placement. Grandma cuts her off and says she's taking all 7 of us home with her tonight, that we're family, and we belong together. Marlena's face changes and she starts talking about procedures and background checks. about how Grandma is technically just a relative who hasn't been involved in our care. I feel my stomach drop because I know what that means. They might split us up anyway. They might send the little ones to different foster homes and keep me somewhere else. And everything I've been trying to prevent for 5 years is about to happen anyway. I start begging before I can stop myself, telling Marlena we have to stay together, that I promise to keep everyone safe, that splitting us up will break them. My voice is getting too loud and the kids are starting to cry again, and I can feel everything falling apart. Grandma kneels down in front of me and takes both my hands. Her eyes are wet when she tells me I'm a child, and this was never supposed to be my job. The words hit me like a punch because nobody has ever said that before. Nobody has ever told me that what's been happening isn't normal or right. She pulls me into a hug, and I can smell her lavender perfume and feel her heartbeat, and something inside me just cracks open. Marlena makes 3 phone calls that take forever. She talks to supervisors and case managers and keeps looking over at all of us huddled together in the waiting room. The kids are exhausted now, the twins falling asleep against each other. Luna curled up in my lap sucking her thumb. Gavin sits next to me not saying anything, but I can feel him watching everything. After what feels like hours, Marlena comes back and says she's approved emergency placement with Grandma for 72 hours while they do a full check. She makes it very clear this is temporary, that my parents will be contacted right away, that there will be follow-up visits and assessments. The words send ice through my whole body because I know exactly what's going to happen when Mom finds out. She's going to say I betrayed the family, that I broke my promise, that I'm the reason everything is falling apart. We all pile into Grandma's car and the kids are acting weird, like this is some kind of fun trip instead of our whole life exploding. The twins are asking if we're going on vacation, and Daphne wants to know if Grandma has toys at her house. I can't answer any of them because my throat is too tight, and I'm just staring out the window watching streetlights pass by. Every mile away from our house feels like another step toward disaster. Grandma keeps glancing at me in the rearview mirror, but I can't look at her because I might start crying again. When we pull up to her house, it's this small blue place with a porch and flower boxes. Nothing like our house with its peeling paint and broken fence. She unlocks the door and the kids rush inside like it's an adventure, touching everything and asking questions. Grandma starts making sleeping arrangements right away, and I realize she has 3 actual bedrooms, not one room with 7 beds crammed in. She puts the twins and the 2 youngest in the guest room with real beds and clean sheets that smell like fabric softener. She sets up Gavin on the pull-out couch in her office and tells him there are books on the shelf if he wants to read. Then she takes me to her craft room and says, "This is my space, just mine," and I don't know what to do with that information. I help get everyone ready for bed because that's what I always do. I brush teeth and find pajamas in the bags Grandma packed and tuck everyone in. But then Grandma tells me to go to my room, that she'll handle bedtime, and I just stand there because I don't know how to not be the one doing this. She gently pushes me toward the craft room and closes the door behind me. The room has a twin bed with a purple comforter and a desk with art supplies and a window that looks out at the backyard. It's quiet. I can't remember the last time I was somewhere this quiet. I lie down on the bed and stare at the ceiling and my whole body feels wrong. I keep listening for crying or someone calling for me or the sound of the babies waking up. At midnight, I jolt awake in panic because I missed a feeding. It takes me a full minute to remember where I am and that there are no bottles to make. I try to go back to sleep, but I can't stop thinking about whether the twins are too hot or if Luna kicked off her blankets. At 1, I get up and check on everyone. They're all sleeping fine, curled up in actual beds with actual space between them. At 2:30, I check again. At 3, Grandma finds me standing in the hallway and sits down on the floor next to me. She doesn't ask questions, just sits there with her hand on my shoulder until I stop shaking. The next morning, I wake up to the smell of pancakes. I come downstairs and find Grandma at the stove making breakfast while all 6 kids sit at the table waiting. Nobody is crying or fighting or asking me for things. I sit down next to Gavin and just watch, my hands feeling useless in my lap because I'm not cooking or feeding anyone. Gavin leans over and whispers that this feels like what normal families do, and I have to leave the table before I start crying in front of everyone. I lock myself in the bathroom and splash cold water on my face and try to breathe. When I come back, Grandma has made me a plate and tells me to eat, and I realize I haven't had someone make me breakfast in 5 years. The phone rings while we're eating, and Grandma answers it. I can tell from her face it's Marlena. She steps into the other room, but I can hear parts of the conversation. She's contacted my parents through the cruise ship emergency line. They're flying back today. There's a family meeting scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Grandma comes back and tells me what I already heard, and I feel sick. Tomorrow I have to face Mom and Dad and explain why I told. Why I broke the one rule that was supposed to keep us all safe. Grandma must see something in my face because she says we're going to the doctor first, all of us, for checkups. I start to say we can't afford that, but she cuts me off and says she's handling it. At the doctor's office, I fill out forms with information I mostly don't know. I can't remember the last time any of the kids had checkups or what vaccines they've had. The doctor sees each kid one by one, and I watch Grandma's expression get harder with every visit. 3 of them are behind on shots. Two have ear infections that have been going on for weeks. Luna's chin stitches look good, but the doctor asks how she got injured, and I have to explain about the playground and the $50 and being alone with everyone. He writes things down and exchanges looks with Grandma that I can't read. Back at the house, Grandma puts the little ones down for naps. Then she sits down with me and Gavin at the kitchen table and asks us to tell her everything. I'm still scared to talk, still hearing Mom's voice warning me about what happens if I tell. But Gavin reaches into his backpack and pulls out a notebook, the kind with the black and white cover that schools give out. He hands it to Grandma without saying anything. She opens it and starts reading, and I watch her face change. Her hands start shaking and her mouth gets tight, and she keeps reading page after page. I lean over and see what Gavin's been writing. Today I woke up at 6 because the babies were crying and my sister was already up making bottles. She looked really tired. Today we had cereal for breakfast, but there wasn't enough milk, so we put water in it. My sister said it was fine. Today my sister didn't go to the school because Daphne was sick, and Mom and Dad left early for work. Today Mom and Dad went to dinner and left $20. My sister made spaghetti for everyone, but there wasn't enough, so she didn't eat. She said she wasn't hungry, but I know she was lying. He's been writing about our life for months, every single day, documenting everything I've been trying to hide. The morning routines and the empty fridge and the nights I fall asleep standing up. The day Mom and Dad left for the cruise with $50. Every detail is there in his careful handwriting, dated and real. Grandma closes the journal and her whole body is shaking now. She asks if she can show it to Marlena, and Gavin looks at me. I realize he's been keeping this record on purpose, that maybe some part of him knew we needed proof. I nod yes, because there's no point in hiding anymore. Grandma's hands shake worse with each page she turns, and I watch her eyes move across the words faster and faster, like she's trying to get through it before she breaks down. She reads about the morning I woke up at 5 to make bottles before school, about the night the twins had croup, and I stayed awake until dawn because I was scared they'd stop breathing, about the time we ate cereal with water for 3 days because there wasn't money for milk. Every entry is dated in his careful handwriting, every detail something I thought I'd hidden well enough. When she gets to the entry about the cruise, her whole body goes still. Today, Mom and Dad left for vacation and gave my sister $50 for the whole week. She tried to make it sound okay, but I saw her face when they drove away. She closes the journal, so hard it makes a snapping sound, then sits there staring at the cover like she's trying to understand how this happened in her own family without her knowing. She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand and looks at me, and I can see she's trying not to cry in front of us. She asks if she can show it to the social worker, her voice quiet and careful, and Gavin turns to look at me waiting for permission. I realize in that moment that he's been keeping this record on purpose, that maybe some part of him understood we needed proof even when I was too scared to ask for help. He's been documenting everything because he knew someone would need to see it eventually, because a 9-year-old boy figured out what I couldn't. I nod yes, and my throat feels too tight to speak, and Grandma pulls both of us close and tells us we're safe now. That evening when the car pulls into Grandma's driveway, I know before the doors even open that it's them. I'm helping the twins with a puzzle on the living room floor when I hear the engine and everything inside me goes cold. Through the window, I see Mom get out first, still wearing her cruise clothes, her face tight with something that makes my stomach hurt. Dad follows behind her and won't look at the house, just stares at the ground like he's already decided this is beneath him. Grandma opens the front door before they can knock, and they push past her into the house, and Mom's eyes find me immediately across the room. Her face is twisted with rage, the kind I've seen before when I did something wrong, when I couldn't keep the babies quiet enough or forgot to clean something. Before Grandma can say anything, before anyone can speak, Mom starts in on how I've betrayed the family and caused unnecessary drama, how I've made them cut their vacation short over nothing, how embarrassing this is for everyone. Her voice gets louder with each word, and the little ones start crying, pressing against me like they can feel the danger. Dad still won't look at me, just stands there with his arms crossed, and I realize he's not even going to pretend to care what happened. Grandma steps between us, and her voice comes out sharp and hard in a way I've never heard before. She demands to know what kind of parents leave 7 children with a 13-year-old for a week with $50. What kind of people think that's acceptable? What kind of mother and father do this to their own kids? Mom's face changes, and she does this thing with her expression that I've seen 100 times, where she makes herself look hurt and confused like she's the victim. She says I'm very mature for my age, that I wanted the responsibility, that she's been teaching me important life skills about family duty and independence. She talks about how she's raising me to be capable and strong, how other parents coddle their children, but she's preparing me for real life. Dad nods along, adding that they trust me completely, that I've always been so good with the younger ones, that this is just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. I stand there listening to them rewrite everything, turn 5 years of me raising their children into some kind of advanced parenting technique, and I can't find words to fight back because they sound so reasonable, so concerned, so completely convinced of their own story. The next day, Marlena arrives at Grandma's house for the family meeting, and my parents' lawyer is already sitting in the living room like he owns the place. He's wearing an expensive suit and has this folder full of papers, and I know before anyone speaks that they've prepared for this, that they've built their defense while we were just trying to survive. Marlena has Gavin's journal now, and she sets it on the coffee table between us, but the lawyer starts talking before she can open it. He spins this story about a troubled teenager who's created unhealthy attachments with her siblings, who's manipulated them against their loving parents, who has serious behavioral issues that the family has been trying to address. He uses words like parentification complex and severe attachment disorder, like they're diagnoses, like I'm the sick one. Mom sits next to him crying, actual tears running down her face, and talks about how worried she's been about my behavior. She says I've always been possessive of the younger kids, that she's tried to encourage me to have my own life and make friends my own age, but I insist on taking over all the parenting duties. She describes me like I'm some kind of control freak who won't let her be a mother, who pushes her away from her own children. Dad nods along, playing the concerned father perfectly, talking about how they've considered family therapy, how they want to help me develop a healthier relationship with my siblings. I sit there listening to them rewrite 5 years of my life, and I can't find words to fight back because they're making me sound crazy, like I'm the problem, like everything I did to keep everyone safe was actually me being sick. I watch Marlena start writing things down in her notebook, see her expression change from concerned to thoughtful, and I know I'm losing. The lawyer keeps talking about how devoted my parents are, how they just want their daughter to get help, how this has been so hard on the family. Then Gavin speaks up. His voice is shaking so bad I can barely hear him at first, but he tells Marlena that everything in his journal is true, that Mom and Dad are lying, that I've been taking care of everyone because no one else would. The lawyer tries to cut him off, says something about not putting children in the middle, but Grandma tells him to let her grandson speak. Gavin's hands are clenched into fists on his lap, and his face is red, but he keeps going. He describes the bedroom we all share, every detail about the 7 beds crammed together, and the lock on the outside that Dad installed supposedly for safety. He talks about the nights when I'd be up with crying babies while our parents watched TV downstairs with the volume turned up so loud they couldn't hear anything. He describes the time I missed 3 days of school because the twins had flu and there was no one else to stay home with them, how Mom and Dad still went to work those days and left me alone to handle it. His voice gets steadier as he talks, like saying it out loud is making him stronger, and he looks right at Marlena when he tells her about the morning routines where I got everyone ready while our parents slept in. He talks about the food situation, about the times we ate cereal with water, about me skipping meals so there'd be enough for everyone else. Mom's perfect facade cracks and she snaps at Gavin to stop lying, that he's been influenced by my manipulation, that none of this is true. But her anger comes too fast, too real, and I see Marlena's expression shift from skeptical to concerned. Mom's voice gets higher and she starts saying Gavin has always had an overactive imagination, that he's confused about what's normal, that I've clearly coached him on what to say. But Gavin doesn't back down, just keeps looking at Marlena and tells her that every word in his journal is real, that he wrote it down because he knew someone needed to see the truth. The lawyer tries to redirect, starts talking about how children can be unreliable witnesses, but Grandma cuts him off and says her grandson is telling the truth, and she has the journal entries to prove it. She opens the notebook to a random page and reads out loud about the day I fell asleep standing up while making breakfast, about how I woke up on the kitchen floor an hour later with burns on my hand from the stove. Mom tries to interrupt, but Grandma keeps reading, entry after entry, date after date, months of documentation that can't be explained away as imagination or manipulation. Marlena closes the journal and looks at my parents with an expression I can't quite read. She asks if she can visit our house to see where we live, and my parents freeze. The lawyer starts talking about how that's not necessary, about privacy concerns, about how home visits require proper procedures, but Marlena cuts him off and says she can get a court order if needed, or they can cooperate voluntarily. Mom's face goes through about 5 different emotions before settling on fake cooperation, and she agrees with this tight smile that doesn't reach her eyes. She shoots me a look across the room that makes my stomach drop, because I know that look means I'll pay for this later. We all head to our cars, and I'm shaking so bad I can barely buckle the little ones into Grandma's back seat. I keep thinking about what they might have hidden or changed, whether they had time to make things look normal, whether Marlena will see through whatever story they've prepared. The drive takes 15 minutes, and I spend every second of it trying to remember what state we left the house in, whether there's anything that will make this worse. We pull up, and my parents are already unlocking the front door, and the lawyer is right behind them looking uncomfortable. Marlena follows them inside with her notebook, and I trail after with Grandma and all the kids, feeling like I'm walking into a trap. But they haven't had time to fix anything. The living room still has toys scattered everywhere and dishes piled in the sink, and that smell of old diapers that never quite goes away. Marlena walks straight to my bedroom without asking directions, like she knows exactly where to find the evidence. She opens the door and I watch her face change as she takes in the 7 beds crammed together, some of them just mattresses on the floor because there's no room for frames. My homework is buried under stacks of baby supplies and clean laundry I haven't had time to put away. There's a changing table shoved in the corner and bottles lined up on my dresser. She walks to the door and examines the lock on the outside, this heavy deadbolt that Dad installed 3 years ago. He starts explaining that it was a mistake, that the hardware store guy installed it wrong, that it's supposed to be on the inside for safety. But Marlena just writes something in her notebook and moves to the kitchen. She opens the fridge and it's almost empty except for a 6-pack of beer and 2 bottles of wine. There's some old Chinese takeout containers and a half-gallon of milk that might be expired. The freezer has ice cream and frozen pizzas, but nothing that looks like real food for kids. She opens cabinets and finds mostly empty shelves, some cereal boxes, a few cans of soup. Then she walks to my parents' bedroom, and the difference is so obvious it makes me feel sick. They have this huge king bed with nice sheets and a TV mounted on the wall. Their attached bathroom is clean with fancy soaps and lotions lined up. There's a mini fridge next to the bed stocked with snacks and drinks. They have a sound system and blackout curtains and carpet that's actually clean. It looks like a hotel room, like people who don't have kids live there. The lawyer shifts his weight and won't look at Marlena. My parents start explaining that they need their rest to be good parents, that they work hard and deserve a comfortable space, but their voices sound hollow. Grandma stands in the doorway of my room looking at those 7 beds, and I see tears running down her face. She doesn't say anything, just stares at the lock on the outside of the door like she can't believe what she's seeing. Marlena takes pictures of everything with her phone. She photographs my room, their room, the empty fridge, the lock. She asks where the kids do homework, and I have to admit there's no space, that we do it at the kitchen table when we can. She asks where I sleep, and I point to the twin bed in the corner that's pushed up against 2 toddler beds. She writes more notes, and I can see my parents getting nervous, see Mom's fake smile starting to crack. Over the next week, Marlena interviews the neighbors, and I don't know what they say until later when Grandma's lawyer gets the reports. But they confirm everything. The woman next door talks about watching me walk all 6 kids to the school every morning for years, how I'd have the baby in a stroller and the toddlers holding hands and the older ones carrying backpacks. She describes hearing babies cry late into the night, seeing lights on in my bedroom window past midnight. The man across the street mentions seeing me hang laundry outside at weird hours, because that was the only time I could get to it. Another neighbor talks about the time she called the school counselor 3 years ago because she was worried, but nothing came of it, and she didn't follow up. They all say they wondered but didn't want to interfere, didn't want to assume the worst, figured someone else would notice if something was really wrong. Each interview adds more weight to what Marlena is building, more proof that this has been going on for years while everyone looked away. The school counselor gets interviewed and admits things I didn't know she'd noticed. She tells Marlena that I've forged permission slips and parent signatures for 3 years, that she recognized my handwriting but didn't push it because I always had explanations. She shows attendance records proving I missed 40 days last year alone. She describes how my grades dropped from straight A's in 3rd grade to C's and D's now, how I fall asleep in class at least twice a week. She talks about the time she asked if everything was okay at home and I told her my parents were just busy with work, that I was helping out like any good older sister. She admits she suspected something was wrong, but I was so convincing, so calm, so mature, that she talked herself out of intervening. She shows Marlena the notes she kept about our conversations, dates and times when she almost called home but didn't. The evidence keeps piling up, and I realize how many people saw pieces of the truth, but nobody put it all together until now. 2 weeks after the hospital incident, Marlena files paperwork for emergency removal of all 7 children from parental custody. Grandma calls to tell me, and her voice is shaking with anger and relief. My parents fight back hard, hiring a better lawyer who costs way more than the first one. This new guy starts building a case that paints them as victims of false accusations, as loving parents being attacked by a vindictive teenager and an interfering grandmother. He files motions claiming the investigation was biased, that Marlena had predetermined conclusions, that the evidence was taken out of context. Mom and Dad do interviews with the lawyer where they cry about their family being torn apart, about how much they love their children, about their fear that I've been manipulating everyone. But Grandma fights harder. She hires her own lawyer who specializes in child welfare cases, and she pays for it by taking out a loan against her house. She tells me she should have done this years ago, that she'll never forgive herself for not seeing it sooner. The custody hearing gets scheduled for 3 weeks later, and those weeks feel like forever. I stay at Grandma's house with all the kids and try to act normal while knowing everything is about to explode. My parents are allowed supervised visits twice a week, and they come to Grandma's house with their lawyer present. The visits are awkward and tense. Mom tries to hug the kids, but they pull away and cling to me instead. Dad sits on the couch looking at his phone while the little ones play. They ask questions about school and homework like they care, but it sounds fake because they never asked before. After the second visit, they stop coming and their lawyer says it's too emotionally difficult for them. Grandma just nods and says that tells the court everything they need to know. The day of the hearing arrives and we all have to go to family court. Grandma gets us there early and we sit in the hallway outside the courtroom while lawyers rush past with folders and briefcases. My parents show up with their lawyer and a woman I don't recognize, and I learn later she's a character witness they hired to testify about what good parents they are. They don't look at us, just walk straight into the courtroom like we're strangers. When we finally go in, the judge is already sitting at the bench looking tired. My parents' lawyer stands up first and starts presenting their case. He shows photos of family vacations we took years ago, back when they still pretended to care. He shows holiday cards with all of us smiling in matching outfits. He presents bank statements showing they paid for food and clothes and school supplies. He calls their character witness who talks about seeing them at church events and community gatherings, about how devoted they seemed. Then Mom testifies and she cries real tears talking about her fear for my mental health, about how I've always been too attached to the younger kids, about how she tried to get me help, but I refused. She makes herself sound like a concerned mother dealing with a troubled daughter, and I watch the judge taking notes. Then Grandma's lawyer stands up and everything shifts. He presents Gavin's journal first, reading entries out loud in the quiet courtroom. He reads about the morning I fell asleep making breakfast and woke up on the floor with burns on my hand. He reads about the night the twins had flu and I stayed up for 36 hours straight because there was nobody else. He reads about the time we ate cereal with water for 3 days because the milk ran out and Mom and Dad were at a concert. Each entry is dated and detailed and impossible to explain away. Then he presents medical records showing missed doctor appointments, delayed vaccinations, untreated ear infections. He shows school attendance records proving I missed 40 days while my parents went to work every single one of those days. He calls 3 neighbors who testify about what they witnessed over the years. The evidence builds like a wall my parents can't climb over. Their lawyer tries to object, tries to claim the journal is unreliable because Gavin is just a kid, but the judge tells him to sit down. Mom's face goes white and Dad stares at the table. Their perfect story is falling apart piece by piece. The judge calls me up to testify and I feel like I might throw up walking to the witness stand. The bailiff makes me swear to tell the truth and I sit in this big chair that makes me feel small. The judge looks at me over her glasses and asks me directly why I didn't tell anyone sooner. My voice comes out shaky, but I explain about Mom's threats, about believing I was protecting everyone, about thinking this was normal because I didn't know anything else. I tell her about being 8 years old and Mom handing me a baby saying it was my responsibility. I describe the morning routines, the nights with no sleep, the forged signatures, the times we didn't have enough food. My parents' lawyer tries to interrupt, but the judge tells him she wants to hear me finish. I talk about believing I was doing the right thing, about being too scared to ask for help, because Mom said they'd take everyone away and split us up. I explain that I thought if I just worked harder, did better, kept everyone safe, then maybe it would be okay. When I finish, the judge is quiet for a long moment, and then she thanks me and says I can step down. My legs are shaking so bad I almost fall walking back to my seat. Gavin testifies next, and he's so nervous his voice cracks. But he describes the morning routine in detail, how I'd wake everyone up at 6, make breakfast for 7 people, pack 6 lunches, get everyone dressed and out the door by 7:30. He talks about walking to the school in a line with me at the front, and the little ones holding hands behind. He describes coming home to me already making dinner, helping with homework, giving baths, reading bedtime stories. He tells the judge about the night Luna was born, how Mom came home from the hospital and handed the baby to me saying I knew what to do. He was 6 years old watching his 11-year-old sister become a mother to a newborn. He talks about the lock on our bedroom door, how Dad said it was for safety but it locked from the outside. His testimony is simple and clear and devastating. When he finishes, even my parents' lawyer looks uncomfortable. The judge asks if anyone has questions for him, and nobody does. What more is there to ask when a 9-year-old has just described 5 years of parentification in his own words? Daphne goes up next, and she's so small the bailiff has to adjust the witness chair for her. The judge smiles at her and asks if she knows why she's here, and Daphne nods very seriously. She tells the judge that Grandma explained I'm her sister, but she always thought I was her mama because I did all the mama things. She talks about how I woke her up every morning and made her breakfast and brushed her hair and walked her to the school holding her hand. The judge asks if her parents did those things, and Daphne shakes her head no. She says Mom and Dad were always sleeping or going out, and I was the one who tucked her in at night. The judge gives her paper and crayons and asks her to draw her bedroom. Daphne draws this picture with 7 beds all squished together, and she writes, "This is where we live," in big, careful letters at the top. She shows it to the judge and points out which bed is mine, which one is hers, where the babies sleep. The judge studies the drawing for a long time before thanking Daphne and telling her she did a very good job. My parents' lawyer doesn't ask her any questions, and I think it's because there's nothing he can say to make a 7-year-old's testimony sound like a lie. The judge says she needs time to review everything and orders psychological evaluations for all 7 of us before making her final decision. Over the next 3 weeks, we each have to meet with a child psychologist who asks questions and does tests and watches how we interact. The little ones all want me in the room with them during their sessions, which the psychologist notes down. Luna cries when they try to separate us and calls me Mama the whole time. The psychologist asks me questions about my childhood, and I realize I don't really have answers because I never got to be a child after age 8. She asks about my dreams and goals, and I can't think of any because I've never had time to dream about anything beyond getting through the next day. The evaluations take forever, and I hate every minute of them, but Grandma says they're important for the case. When the results come back, the judge reviews them in court. The psychologist testifies that all 6 younger kids show primary attachment to me instead of our parents. She says they view me as their mother figure and demonstrate anxiety when separated from me. She explains that I show signs of chronic stress and anxiety consistent with long-term caretaker burden, and that my emotional development has been significantly impacted. She describes the family dynamic as severely dysfunctional, with clear evidence of parentification and neglect. The judge asks if therapy can fix this, and the psychologist says therapy can help, but the pattern is deeply established after 5 years. She recommends the children be placed in a stable environment with consistent adult caregivers, and that I receive intensive therapy to process my trauma. My parents' lawyer tries to argue the evaluation is biased, but the judge cuts him off and says she's heard enough. My parents' lawyer stands up and makes one last attempt to save their case. He suggests family therapy and reunification services, says my parents are willing to do whatever it takes to fix things. He talks about the importance of keeping families together and giving parents a chance to learn better skills. But then Grandma's lawyer stands up and presents a timeline showing this has been going on since I was 8 years old. He shows the pattern is deeply established and systematic, not just poor parenting that can be fixed with classes. Marlena testifies about her investigation and says she found no evidence my parents understand the harm they caused or feel genuine remorse. She describes their attempts to blame me and manipulate the narrative as further proof they're not capable of change. She recommends permanent removal of all children from parental custody, with no reunification services. The judge thanks everyone and says she'll issue her ruling within the week. Those 7 days feel like the longest of my life. 3 months after Luna split her chin open on that playground, the judge calls us all back to court for her final decision. We sit in the same courtroom, but everything feels different now because I know what's coming. The judge explains she's reviewed all the evidence and testimony and psychological evaluations. She says it's clear I've been serving as the primary caretaker for 6 children since age 8, and that my parents have abdicated their parental responsibilities. She talks about the lock on the bedroom door and the sleeping arrangements and the missed medical appointments and forged signatures. She says the pattern of neglect is severe and long-standing, and that my parents have shown no genuine remorse or understanding of the harm caused. Then she awards temporary custody of all 7 children to Grandma Bernadette. My parents are given supervised visitation rights twice a month at a court-approved facility. Mom starts crying and Dad just stares at the table. Their lawyer says they plan to appeal, but the judge says her decision stands pending any appeal. We all leave the courtroom together, and for the first time in my life, I feel like maybe things might actually be okay. My parents use their visitation rights exactly twice. The first visit is awkward with a social worker sitting in the room watching everything. Mom tries to hug everyone, but the kids pull away and cluster around me instead. Dad asks questions about school, but nobody really answers. The second visit is worse because Mom spends the whole hour crying and telling us how much she misses us. But she never apologizes or admits she did anything wrong, just keeps saying how unfair this all is. After that, they stop coming. Their lawyer calls Grandma to say the visits are too emotionally difficult for them. Grandma just nods when she hangs up and tells me their absence speaks louder than any words could. Mom calls Grandma's house one afternoon about a month later. I answer the phone and immediately hear her screaming about how I've destroyed the family and ruined their lives. She says they can't show their faces in the neighborhood anymore, that everyone knows what happened and judges them. She calls me selfish and manipulative and says I've always wanted attention. Grandma takes the phone from me and listens for maybe 30 seconds before hanging up and blocking the number. She sits me down and explains that some people never take responsibility for their choices, that they'll always blame everyone else instead of looking at themselves. She says Mom and Dad chose this life by choosing not to be parents, and now they're choosing to be victims instead of facing what they did. Grandma sets up therapy for everyone. The younger kids go individually once a week, and we all do group therapy together on Saturdays. The therapist is nice and patient, and helps the little ones understand that what happened wasn't normal or okay. She explains that families are supposed to have parents who actually parent, that kids aren't supposed to raise other kids. She uses dolls and drawings to show them what healthy families look like. Luna still calls me Mama sometimes, especially when she's tired or scared. I'm learning to gently correct her and say I'm her sister while reassuring her I'm not going anywhere. The therapist says it'll take time for everyone to adjust to new roles, but we're making progress. I start my own therapy too, separate from the group sessions. My therapist is this woman who specializes in trauma, and she helps me work through 5 years of being a child parent. We talk about the weird grief I feel about losing a role that was destroying me, but felt like my entire identity. She explains that I built my whole sense of self around taking care of everyone, and now I don't know who I am without that job. She helps me understand that protecting my siblings by staying silent actually put all of us in more danger, that speaking up earlier could have prevented years of harm. It's hard to accept that, but I'm trying to learn that asking for help isn't the same as failing. Grandma enrolls me in a new school where nobody knows our story. For the first time in years, I'm just a student, not a parent pretending to be a student. I joined the art club because I used to like drawing before I stopped having time for anything. I make friends with these girls who invite me to hang out after school, and I have to keep reminding myself I can actually go because someone else is home with the kids. I still have moments of panic where I think about who's watching everyone before remembering that's not my job anymore. My new friends don't understand why I sometimes zone out or why I'm so tired all the time, but they're patient with me while I figure out how to be a normal teenager. 4 months after the custody change, Grandma gets a call from my parents' lawyer. They want to relinquish their parental rights entirely. They're moving to another state for a fresh start and want to be released from child support obligations. The lawyer explains they're willing to sign away all rights in exchange for no financial claims against them. Grandma's lawyer negotiates a settlement that terminates their rights completely. They'll have no legal relationship to any of us and no financial responsibility. Grandma has to take out another loan to cover the legal fees, but she says it's worth it to have this finished. The papers get filed and a court date gets set for the rights termination hearing. The day the rights termination is finalized, we all go to court one last time. My parents aren't even there, just their lawyer with signed documents. The judge reviews everything and asks if we understand what this means. Grandma explains it to us in simple terms, that Mom and Dad are choosing to not be our parents anymore. The judge signs the papers and just like that, it's done. I feel this strange mix of relief and grief sitting in that courtroom. They were terrible parents, but they were still my parents, and now they're just gone, choosing their own comfort over 7 kids they created. Grandma drives us all home and tells me their choices reflect on them, not on us, that we didn't fail them, they failed us. 6 months after the rights termination, we all pile into Grandma's car for the adoption hearing. The twins are fidgeting in their seats, and Luna keeps asking if she gets to talk to the judge, and I tell her yes while trying to keep my own nerves under control. We walk into the courthouse together, and it feels different from all those other times. Lighter somehow. Like we're here for something good instead of something scary. The judge is this older woman with kind eyes who calls us up one at a time to ask if we want Grandma to be our legal mother. Gavin goes first and says yes without hesitation, his voice steady and clear. The twins go together and both nod so hard I worry they'll hurt their necks. Daphne walks up and whispers her yes into the microphone, then runs back to sit next to me. When it's Luna's turn, she climbs up to the stand in her little purple dress, and the judge has to adjust the microphone down to her height. The judge asks her the question, and Luna looks back at me first, then at Grandma, then says yes in this tiny voice that somehow carries through the whole courtroom. The judge smiles and signs the papers, and just like that, Grandma becomes our legal mother, all 7 of us officially hers. We take pictures on the courthouse steps, and Luna keeps saying she has a new mama now, and I gently remind her that Grandma is everyone's mama, but I'm still her sister. That night, Grandma makes this huge dinner with all our favorite foods crammed onto the table, and halfway through the meal, she disappears into her room and comes back with a wrapped box. She hands it to me and tells me to open it, and inside is a journal exactly like Gavin's but completely empty, all those blank pages waiting. She tells me I can write my own story now, not the one I was forced into, but the one I choose, and I open to the first page where she's written an inscription. It says, "To my granddaughter, who was brave enough to break silence." And I start crying right there at the dinner table while everyone watches. Gavin reaches over and squeezes my hand, and the little kids don't really understand why I'm crying, but they pile onto my lap anyway, and Grandma just sits there smiling with tears in her own eyes. The weeks after the adoption settle into routines that feel strange because they're so normal, like I'm living in someone else's life. Grandma wakes everyone up for school in the mornings while I'm still getting dressed, and I come downstairs to find breakfast already made, and the little kids eating without me having to remind them. She helps with homework at the kitchen table while I do my own work, and when bedtime comes, she's the one doing bath time and reading stories and tucking everyone in. I'm allowed to just be a sister now, playing games with them when I want to, helping when I feel like it, but never responsible for whether they survive the night. It takes weeks before I stop waking up in panic thinking I've forgotten to feed someone or missed a diaper change, before I can sleep through the night without checking on everyone. Grandma hires this tutor who comes 3 times a week to help me catch up on everything I missed or slept through. My grades start climbing back up from the C's and D's to actual B's and A's, and my teachers keep commenting on how different I seem in class. One teacher tells me I'm more present now, more engaged, and I realize she's right because I'm actually learning things instead of just trying to stay conscious until the bell rings. The tutor is patient when I don't understand something and explains it different ways until it clicks, and I start remembering what it felt like to actually enjoy school before everything got so hard. For the first time in years, I'm reading books because I want to. Not because I have to write a report and I join the art club where I spend hours just drawing without worrying about who needs me at home. Gavin and I grow closer in this new way that feels like actual siblings instead of parent and child. We sit together doing homework sometimes and he tells me about his day at the school, about his friends and his classes, normal kid stuff that he never talked about before. One afternoon, he explains that he started the journal because his teacher said writing helps process feelings, and he had a lot of feelings about watching me struggle every day. He says he wrote down everything he saw because some part of him knew it wasn't right, that someone needed to see what was really happening. He tells me he's sorry he didn't speak up sooner, and I tell him he saved us all by speaking up when it mattered, that his journal was the thing that made everyone finally believe us. He looks relieved when I say that, like he's been carrying guilt he didn't need to carry, and I realize we both spent too long blaming ourselves for things that were never our fault. A year after Luna's injury, I'm 14 and doing well in the school with real friends who invite me to hang out on weekends. I'm learning what it means to be a teenager instead of a substitute parent, going to movies and shopping at the mall and having sleepovers like normal kids do. My friends don't know the whole story, and I'm okay with that. Just enjoying being someone who gets to complain about homework and crushes instead of whether there's enough food in the house. The kids are all thriving with Grandma in ways I couldn't make happen no matter how hard I tried. They're hitting developmental milestones that doctors worried they'd missed, laughing more, acting like actual children instead of burdens I had to manage. The twins are doing better in the school now that someone helps with their homework every night, and Daphne joined soccer and comes home covered in grass stains talking about goals and practices. Luna's chin scar is barely visible now, just a thin line that catches the light sometimes, and reminds me of the day everything changed. She's in kindergarten and absolutely loves it, brings home drawings every day that she tapes to Grandma's fridge. Her latest drawing shows our family with Grandma in the middle, and all 7 of us kids around her. Everyone smiling and holding hands, finally in the right roles. She stopped calling me Mama except sometimes when she's really tired or scared, and even then she catches herself and says, sorry, like she's done something wrong. I tell her it's okay. That change takes time, that I'll always be here even though I'm her sister, not her mother. I'm not going to say everything is perfect, or that I don't still have hard days where the weight of those 5 years crashes down on me without warning. Sometimes I wake up from nightmares about being back in that house with all the kids crying and no food in the fridge and my parents gone. Sometimes I see a mom with a baby at the grocery store and feel this weird mix of relief and grief for the childhood I lost. My therapist says that's normal, that you don't just get over being a child parent the moment the situation ends, that healing takes time and patience and probably years of work. But I have my own room now with posters on the walls and books on the shelf and space to just be a kid. I have my own life with school and friends and plans for the future that don't involve keeping 6 other people alive. And my siblings have a real childhood with a parent who actually wants to raise them, who shows up to the school events and makes doctor appointments and knows their teachers' names. We're all finally exactly what we should have been all along. A grandmother who stepped up when it mattered most, and 7 kids who get to just be kids.